Good morning from Easier Habits Live, your 8 a.m. Central Business live stream. I'm Alec from Easier Habits, business growth consultant.
And I am Meg. I am a global English communication coach and consultant.
So we are doing an extended series about figuring out how to do ad funnels, and specifically video sales letter is a new popular strategy. So I've launched a funnel in my business, and Meg is launching hers. So we'll talk about that after communication tip.
All right, so communication tip for the day. We've been talking about eye contact and space, and one thing that's really important these days is knowing how to make eye contact with a digital audience. And this is something that I feel like people are starting to get, but I still can't count the number of times I've had meetings where people are looking like this the whole time. As you can very clearly see, I'm not looking at you, as opposed to here, where I can be like really staring into the camera. And there's a lot of different ways that you can deal with eye contact on here. Again, I always come back to be cognizant of what you are doing. Pay attention. Are you looking at yourself? So like right now I'm looking at myself on the computer screen, and now I'm looking at myself on the camera screen, and now I'm looking at the actual lens. So knowing where your lens is, right? Some people, I think, if they're just using their phone, right? These days, phones have multiple lenses. Knowing which one to look at. I've had to figure that out on my phone. I was looking at the wrong one for a while, and I was like, why do I look like I'm not looking at people? And so that's important, knowing where to look, but also knowing when to not just be staring. When is it okay to kind of look away and think? And like when we're doing these things, I try to make a point of actually making eye contact with you, as well as kind of, I'm looking at myself, I'm looking around. So I'm not, fixated on one point. And so kind of decide where you would like your focus to be and figure out how to get your eyes focused on that point. And again, the best way to do this is record yourself. And this is a really easy one to record because you just use your webcam or your phone or whatever, take a video of yourself saying whatever you want, does not matter, and then watch it back and see where you're looking. And then you can kind of practice. The hard thing is that in order to see where I'm looking, right, I have to look at the screen, which means then I'm not looking at you. So you are going to have to record it. But it doesn't have to be long. Just making sure that you know what to look at and, pay attention.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is the mental game around remembering that you're talking to real people and not multitasking.
Yeah. And not checking yourself out like, oh man, my hair's a little bit crazy today, or anything like that, right?
There's a lot of behaviors that come more naturally when you're in person. Mm-hmm. They have to think about a little bit more when you're on camera.
Yep, it's true. But you do eventually get used to it. I feel like, I don't know, I'm pretty used to it these days. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, doing these videos here or something, one of my own things is, once you figure out how to do it, you do get used to just talking to a camera. I guess I also do a lot of Zoom sessions. And and I really try to connect with my audience, whether it's an audience of many people or one. The great thing about like a many people Zoom session, you just look at one camera and everyone feels like you're looking at them. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And so it's a great way to build some of that rapport.
Yeah. Well, and I feel the same thing, especially in my coaching sessions, because the people who are there absolutely to have that experience and connect with you and have a relationship, whereas that is very distinct from many work meetings where people really are just doing something else in the background because they don't want to be there in the first place. And so that mental game around making sure that you're there, I think will vary depending on the context. And there's a lot of context where I do have really great connections and sometimes almost forget that I'm in a different room than the person because I am so focused in on them. But, I see there's a wide variety of experiences.
Yeah. Oh, and really quick too, if you're working like one-on-one with someone and you really need to see what their reactions are and what they're kind of doing. For example, if I'm on my laptop, I'll put my client's video right underneath my webcam so I can see both of them at the same time.
Yes.
Kind of like my car has a digital speedometer so that I don't ever have to wonder how fast I'm going. I can just like look straight ahead and it's there. I like very easy being able to see stuff, which was a very terrible sentence, but that's...
I do that too with clients and meetings, right? Putting on a desktop, putting your video feed of them right over the camera or by the camera or whatever is extremely helpful, so that you're not like, they're not looking at the side of your head while you're trying to like connect with them. So great tip.
Okay.
All right. So you have created your template. How does it feel to have that? You sent it out to at least someone yesterday?
I sent it out to 6 people.
6 people. How does that feel?
That feels so good in so many ways. And again, it's so funny because, all of this time I'm like, okay, I'm not writing a book. I'm just doing this thing. And even as much as I pared it down, you took one look at it last night and you're like, whoa, that's too much. Let's pare it down some more. And so, it's good perspective for me, right? Saying like, okay, yeah, I see what you mean. Because there's this stuff that I feel like I want to put in order for people to get the most out of it, but also recognizing that that's not necessarily what my audience is looking for or what they even necessarily need. So kind of the great thing about that is I did more work than I would need to do. And so now I get to just take out those bits that are the actual template rather than explanations of the template. But I was able to get that sent and already had a few people respond saying, I'll look at this by Friday or I'll look at this tomorrow. So I'm hoping to get some good feedback on, all of these people are Japanese, with a decent level of English. And so seeing what's helpful for them, what's not. And I would like to take what I have done and turn it into something. So, that could be a Kindle book that I could publish or a course or something that I would use that as like our foundation. So, but, again, getting it done, there's that part of me that I have to like sit back and like celebrate that I did that.
Yep.
Like it was a big thing. And if, I focus so much on, okay, now what's the next thing? And I don't take that time, then it makes each next thing feel like that much more of a burden. Yeah. But
you got to be a good boss to yourself, right? Yeah. And celebrate the wins.
I'm trying to. Yeah. So, but yeah, and part of it too, it's nice to be able to show people what I've been working on, especially these people that know me, and some of them are people that I've been helping or they've been helping me or we've just been part of this community. And so being like, look, I did a thing. It's nice. There's that sense of accomplishment.
Well, and that in general, like the capture what you do and then put it in something you can share is like one, maybe that's just the business tip of the day, is like try and do that. And especially where you're already doing work, try and capture it and share it in some format so people can find you, so that you could be a lead magnet, whatever it is. But that really is the way to scale, especially if you're a solopreneur and providing services. Yeah. So, but to give some context to what you had produced, right? And we were trying to get something launched last week. And it went from Thursday to Friday. You thought you might do it Saturday, and you're like, I can't face this. And then you were up late last night releasing this thing, and it is literally a chapter out of a textbook. There are 4 pages of solid English text before you get to the template. There are sidebars, just like in a textbook. There are bright colors, which is very nice. Pretty. Yeah, it is very pretty. And so, my first instinct is if like I was going to download a template, even as a native English speaker, my mind might be put off by like, I don't want to do that much work to like figure out how to use this, versus like having a template and a few examples, and then saying like, hey, if you would like more coaching about how to or feedback on your pitch or whatever, you can reach out to me here. that would be, that would be plenty. And so one thing I'm trying to work with as I produce a checklist, right, is like, how do I have checklist items that are pretty much self-explanatory, minimal instruction, just, here's 10 things you can do to see if getting if like a business partner is right for you.
Yeah.
And, and it leads into further services at the end by, saying like, there are other options than getting a business partner. Have you considered these things as part of the checklist? So, which coaching is not the only one, but, one of those items and leads to an upsell, but like trying to keep it simple for people who are hurried. And that's like really, I think, one of the big skills here is how do you break down the user journey into bite-sized chunks? And so you're taking someone who presumably, in your case, taking someone who presumably like may not have even, when we have ads, may not have even known who you are, and like asking them to invest in like mastering a textbook chapter.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's kind of a big jump.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you ask them to have their email, but like the next part, right? And so it's like you want what people say a lot, and is really powerful to build trust, is a quick win.
Yeah.
Right? And if you make them read several pages before they can even engage with the template, that's going to, extend the time before they're having a successful interaction with your brand, right? You haven't actually delivered the value yet.
Well, and I have to, again, step out of my, background in history as like an instructional designer, curriculum developer, teacher person who like, that's what I do. I create materials with the scaffolding around them so that they know how to use the materials properly. And that's what I would want, right? Again, for me, but also recognizing that this is not that I need to be thinking more about exactly what they need now, the most simple, basic form. Because, it also goes back to, I thought I'd cut it down. Like, I have so many notes of other stuff. Like, this could be a whole huge book. And I had chunks of text that I was like, oh, well, it's, good English practice, or maybe I'll get someone to translate it into Japanese or something. I don't know. But, feeling like I had pared it down, but it's also good to get that perspective of, so frequently I see this as the thing that needs to get done, even when my brain wants to do like off the charts. Yeah. And then what I actually need to do is like down here. Right. And I'm like, wait, but that's, and that's so much easier. Right. And there was a part of me that like, I don't like showing things to people until they're at least a certain level of ready, but I hadn't even shown you. Yeah. Right. I showed it to you for the first time last night. And yeah, after I, put in, I don't know, how long did that take me? Like 15 hours-ish or something? I don't know, something like that. And, could have done before I did all the pretty formatting and, all of that, like, hey, what do you think of this text? But, at the same time, I don't feel like the time was wasted. One, because I'll probably use it for something, and two, because I really like how it looks, and I feel like I produced something nice. Yeah,
it is nice. I think the challenge here, right, is just the recognizing your yardstick is not their yardstick. Yeah. And that's where, as a developer, I have had so many of my programs that were months or years of effort, not only of myself, but a team thrown away because people focused so much on building something that was nice from their perspective as the producer, rather than bothering to test it with the users, right?
Yeah. And that is, make sure not to fall into that.
Right. And it's also one of the reasons why people, like, it's a negative feedback cycle, right? Yeah. Because if you get into this, and we're trained to do this by school, by, thinking really hard and then just, releasing it once for a final grade. But it's a negative feedback cycle, because if you're not taking into account what the actual end user needs and wants, you end up putting a bunch of effort into something that's kind of orthogonal or unrelated to what they actually want, so you don't get the results. And then for the next project, you you worry over it even more, and it becomes a bigger deal, and you try, like, that's the perfectionist cycle, right? And you spend more time in your head doing your thing rather than getting feedback from people.
Yeah.
And it's really like the habit is the breaking the cycle.
Yep.
So I guess here,
Break
like,
the cycle.
show it to anyone as soon as possible, right? Because I could have saved you several days, and if after and it's partly about like freedom and priorities, right?
Yeah.
If you show it to somebody and get feedback, and they're like, this is good enough to go, you don't have to spend 3 more days on it, you can save yourself 3 days. You can still, if you want to make pretty documents, choose to spend 3 days and stay up late and do all of those things. But now you have like the choice rather than like just being stuck in your head.
And I think that's where like the true value is that ability to make the choice. You know, as I look back on it, I definitely did not do it in a beautifully linear process that would have produced the MVP first. I kind of went back and forth between formatting and writing this thing and then doing that list and then making these examples and then going and doing a different formatting. And then, so it was all kinds of circular. And this is something that I've noticed a lot just with our conversations is, okay, what is the most important, right? That MVP, right? What is that thing that if I only do that, right? Crappy text on a page. That's what I really have to have. And doing that first, right? And then letting the other stuff come later.
Yeah.
And as opposed to, you know, my brain's like, oh, let's do this thing and let's do that thing, which, you know, sometimes I have a hard time focusing on that thing that should get done first. And it would still save me so much more time in the long run. So I would like to remember that.
Yeah. So literally yesterday, as I'm doing my funnel, you know, I was tempted to dive into, I use like Affinity Publisher, which is like a light version of Adobe software. They do a pretty good job, and it's like a small one-time fee that's like as much as 1 month of one Adobe product. So I'm a fan. But you know, like that's the nice publishing software, and I could go straight to that. But I've worked on other projects, and including like independent projects that I've done entirely in Publisher. And I realized that like there's a lot of text editing that takes more time and is kind of, that is, you know, more difficult and time consuming, having put it all in there rather than having finalized the text and then, you know, translating into that document. So I just did a Google Doc and I wrote out like, what's the story I'm trying to tell somebody about this that's going to go into the marketing aspect, and then, you know, what are the bullet points on the checklist. And I probably will finalize my copy in just Google Docs before bringing it in to template it. And so it's one of the ways that I'm mentally, you know, trying to put it in a place where I'm not going to be tempted to like reach for the presentation tools before I've really thought about the core content.
Which is smart. I've been doing mine in Canva, which it's all beautiful presentation stuff, and they've got all these new things for making documents and grids, and it's so great.
And they're going to distract you, like all the extra features. Versus just like a blank page.
Yeah, it's true. It's incredibly distracting because it's fun. Like that's the part that I'm like, ooh, I can like take this template and try that thing and change these colors, mess with these fonts, you know, font choice. Like, spent way too much time on that. You know, but again, all of these are lessons that I can look back on, having done this, saying, okay, well, next time I know, starting Google Docs. And do just this basic thing, outline it, and then show it to you, right? Or one of these other people that I've, you know, been sending my stuff to check it and get that feedback first, and then I can do the, you know, kind of rapid iteration. Right,
and this isn't about like the grade for this particular project. This is about developing a habit, right? Yes. It's because if you have the habit of identifying what the most important part of any release is, like, one, that's an important habit, right? If you have the habit of showing that to someone quickly to get feedback and learning more often and like multiplying the amount of learning that you're getting rather than delaying the learning, right? Releasing more projects, all of that is, you know, like that's compounding several positives in a better process. And so like you will have more clarity, you will learn faster, and you will release more projects, like, those start multiplying each other, and as that becomes part of your process, you see exponential results, rather than one of the things that I talk a lot about is escape velocity, in terms of where people are stuck, because people get like stuck at a certain level. And one of those levels is like the zero results level. It's not that you don't have zero results, because you have networks or whatever, but in a new area, right?
Yeah.
You've been getting clients, you have referrals or whatever, but this is a new area, right? And launching like a new area in a new skill is really difficult. Most people give up.
Yeah.
Right? And if you want the escape velocity, most people think they have to get it by doing something amazing.
Yeah.
And very often, again, process beats strategy. It's doing something good consistently and frequently, right? And you have to scale the process down small enough that you can do many iterations of it, all right, to get that skill and to get all those benefits.
Yeah. Well, and it's so this kind of process is something that I've wanted to do. I mean, going back to 2015, when I was like, oh, maybe I'll be a life coach. And I quickly realized that so much of that is, your personal, marketing and SEO and the website maintenance and all of that. And I was like, I just want to help people. And, I was not in a place where I could think about the process and have the discipline to work through it. Granted, I had one kid and then was pregnant with another at the time. So like there were other things going on, but this really is the first time, honestly, in my 36 years of life, where I feel like I'm actually taking charge of the things that I want to do, and saying no to other things, which is hard, and it's great to be able to have this learning process. Because I, look back and I'm like, this could have helped me then, and this could have helped me then. And I could think about it, as far as like a regret, but it's less that and more just, yay, I'm getting it now. Yeah. Right?
I'm finally moving on.
Right? I've spent so much time like just butting my head against this wall that I, almost did give up, I feel like. And now I'm figuring out my way through it or around it or whatever. And it's empowering.
Well, and learning, like, marketing, if it doesn't come naturally to you, feels awkward, salesy and slimy. But like as a business owner, it really is just digital self-reliance. Yeah. Right? Because a core part of any business is helping people who need your services find you. Yep. And if you can't do that, you are not a complete business. And so, I mean, short of like moving to the woods and starting your own farm and, like completely like, providing being off the grid and providing yourself with all of your needs for life, right? Like that way, that's maybe total self-reliance. But in terms of like a digital world, right? If you're still going to be connected to the internet and using the internet, knowing how to market yourself. And this is a skill that is still applicable too for people who have careers and are working for somebody else, because to be honest, the salary that you negotiate is in part due to how well you market your value to the company. Yeah. And so this really isn't just a business owner thing. I remember when I was volunteering at SCORE, somebody who wanted to sell patents. And he kept saying, I'm not a business. I don't want to market. I just want people to buy my patents. I'm like, how are they going to find you? You are in the business of selling patents. And yeah, it would be an amazing world if, people just magically appeared on your doorstep and being like, I want exactly what you have to sell. But
which I've had, like, and that's the thing. Yeah. Like, I've put things out and people are like, oh, Meg, we need you. And right. So the difference is, though, that with this, I feel so much more, in control and able to steer it where I want it to go, rather than just letting like life come at me and just having to accept whatever comes. And I think that's where the big difference is that if you do just wait around, you might get somebody, and they may not be who you want or where you want to be headed, and you'll just go with it and then find out you're not as happy or where you wish you could have been. Right. And so doing this, I know that
Yeah.
like that this is where I'm headed and I feel good about it.
Yeah. Yeah, being in control of that. So I think there's a couple things. Like one, you can get a client from out of nowhere or just referrals, and that, that will feel great. And your brain, your lazy brain, will always want to be like, well, maybe if I just sit around, someone will fall into my lap, right? And so it's kind of a trap, but like that's obviously not going to happen enough to like actually sustain and build your business. But the other thing that is just as insidious, right, is if you're in that holding pattern where you're not in control of your clients, you're not full and busy with your time with people who are paying you, is a bunch of people who don't want to pay you will come in and say, oh my goodness, you're so amazing. I need this. Can you do free work for me?
Yeah.
And maybe something will come out of this later. And I'm kind of the opinion, like, yeah, you can do things to learn. Do things for free to learn if you're not good at your craft.
Yeah.
But like if you are, that is soul crushing because you're sending yourself the message that you're not worth paying and you're not good at your craft on some level. Like you're reinforcing that to yourself. And they're taking all of the time that you could be investing in a sustainable business and directing it elsewhere. And a lot of people get really good at asking for stuff, which is not actually either of us. And so if you don't have a lot of experience with people who are really good at asking for stuff for free, and they're, and you're used to people or being around certain people who ask for little and follow up and reciprocate a lot, the people who just ask without a second thought are going to consume all your time, and you're going to find that a lot of these opportunities don't pan out. And that was one of the things that I learned early as a web dev with internships, where like every single internship said like, and if you do good, we might have a job. But like the definition of doing good was like make money for a product that has never made money yet or something like that. And it's just like, what entry level or like pre-entry level, it's not entry level job, internship job is going to have the power, even if I had the work and experience to like create an entirely new project for a business of people that has not successfully been able to make money on that project before. And so there, so like the people, like there are people who develop the skill of saying nice things they know people want to hear to get them free work, right? And that's where you have to be constantly on guard from that. And I've seen people who are like the opposite, who bite your head off because they've been in that space so long and they're so jaded that like they reach out to like anyone who talks to me is going to is going to try and take advantage of me because I guess they've been in that space too long. And so there's a lot of these negative cycles that happen when you don't actually take control of this process of like, all right, how do I reach out to other people? A fun example of this whole process, I think boiling down all the complicated stuff that I've just said, I was in a class that was like, it was a church class on dating, and I have low expectations for such a thing, generally speaking. But I think it was a like adjunct math professor that was teaching it or something. He went through the mathematical proof that in a dating relationship, the asker will get better outcomes than someone who waits around to be asked, which, in a context where that falls primarily on men, isn't as advantageous to men, right? Because they can selectively ask only the people they would like to date versus being a person. I don't have the mathematical proof, but like the general concept is like, if you can only say yes or no to the offers you get, then you generally get less positive outcomes. And so do whatever you want in your dating life, but in business you really should be the asker because that gives you a whole lot of power.
Yep, I like that.
So
it's a good tip.
All right, I guess that will be the business tip for the day. Be the asker, right? You don't want to be in the position of saying, just yes or no to people who come to you, unless that's from a funnel that you have created, right? Yes. And you have automated the asking, which is perfectly acceptable.
Yay.
All right. So until tomorrow, make big changes, one small habit at a